Today, your dollar is worth about 12 or 13 cents less than it was just 2 years ago. In 2021, the average American household spent about $5,500 a month. Today, with inflation, if you wanted to buy everything that $5,500 used to get you just 24 months ago, you'd have to spend $6,290. That's almost $800 more. In the meantime, wages have increased for some people, but definitely not enough to close the gap. So where does this extra money come from? What's up, business heroes? Today I'm joined by Rich Avery, the host of the More Than a Pastor podcast. Rich has been on a mission to help pastors and church leaders supplement their ministry income with a purposeful and sustainable business or side hustle. Now, anyone watching or listening who isn't a pastor, hang in there, stay tuned, because you don't have to be a pastor to benefit from a little extra income, especially today with record high inflation rates pinching everybody's pocket. Rich is here with us to shoot the breeze about side gigs, passive income streams, and share some lessons he's learned from his self-employment journey that I believe would be helpful to anyone who's tuning in. Rich, thanks for coming on the show today.
Hey, David, thanks so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Now, you've been side gigging for a while before all the cool kids were doing it. I'm curious, what got you interested in entrepreneurship in the first place? You were a pastor, right? What motivated you to become more than a pastor and ultimately start More Than a Pastor?
Well, I have always had dreams of entrepreneurship. And I think it started maybe when I was a kid. My grandfathers on both sides of my mom's side and father's side were both farmers, but they also had a regular day job. So I think I kind of learned, I got the bug in that way from seeing entrepreneurship in my family, from people, having their own business in that way. And then as a pastor, as I got started in ministry, my wife and I were starting out in our family also. And so we had ended up with 5 children, and they have been such an amazing blessing for us. They're all young adults now. But at the time, we were kind of struggling financially in that, I could have had 20 children, but the church wasn't going to pay me anymore, the more kids I had. And so I realized, okay, the income we have from the church is great, but it's not enough for the family our size. And so I looked at other opportunities. And so that kind of started me on my journey of doing different side hustles, different gigs to try to earn extra money to supplement our ministry income. So I've always been dabbling in something.
Okay. Well, that's really helpful to paint a picture for anyone who isn't familiar with church ministry as a vocation. It's good just to kind of set the stage. There's certainly a spectrum, and I feel that one end of the spectrum gets a lot more attention than the other. You have things like Preachers and Sneakers Instagram account that showcases, the retail price of the designer sneakers some celebrity pastor is wearing. But most pastors, most people in this line of work live closer to the poverty line, if not below it. And they're essentially living off of a crowd-funded salary. And now I understand you're helping other people in the same situation find ways to supplement that?
Yeah, exactly. Historically, I would say a lot of pastors have struggled financially, maybe have been like 1 or 2 paychecks away from financial difficulty, if all of a sudden they had a big bill to pay, or kids wanted to go to college or something like that. And like you talked about in the opening of the show, with our recession or inflation budget gap right now, some businesses offer cost of living increases. Sometimes churches do. Many times they can't. And so a pastor's income has decreased over the last couple of years just because of inflation if their church hasn't been able to keep up with that. So just in general, I've had a heart for pastors who have struggled financially and wanted to create more income for their family, but also looking ahead to the future. I just see that the traditional church model of a church being able to survive on tithes and offerings, that's the typical way churches have had their funding. I really see that changing, and a lot of churches are seeing a decrease in engagement or participation and in giving. I really feel like pastors are going to need to figure out, what am I going to do to provide income? So I have a heart for those struggling now, and I have a heart for those whose lives are about to change in the next year or two, as many churches have to make some severe cutbacks. And I want to be there to help pastors figure out how to create income outside the church so they can serve God and provide for their family no matter what happens.
That's great. Obviously, the recession and inflation and just everything that everybody's gone through. And as I mentioned, pastors aren't the only ones who have to struggle with, we need to find ways to supplement what we're getting from our workplace. And then that all kind of trickles down. It's kind of interesting how that works in a church, because typically the church revenue, if you want to call it that, is coming from the people who are part of the community. And when everybody's experiencing a downturn, that's going to trickle in. So I think what you're doing and what you're helping pastors to do by supplementing their income outside the church isn't just helping them, it's also kind of managing the reality of the situation that everybody's experiencing with lower incomes, higher expenses. So I think it's a great move, and I think it serves the community well. And what you're coaching people through, I think, can apply across the board. So what are some ways that you coach your clients to get started on their pastorpreneur journey?
For many pastors, I have to start with mindset, because a lot of times pastors have felt like they can't do anything outside the church. Like if they're called to be a pastor in the church, that's their calling, and they couldn't do anything outside of it. That's changing a lot today. A lot of the millennials and Gen Zers are part of the creator or gig economy, and they don't have that mindset. But if you're 40 and up as a pastor, you maybe have been taught that if you could see yourself doing something else, you should go do that and not be a pastor, because if you're a pastor, you need to be all in your church ministry. So a lot of it starts with mindset for older pastors to just realize that everything we do is part of our calling that God has given us, and whether it's working in the church or outside the church, it's enabling you to do what God's called you to do. So to help pastors realize that they could create income outside the church that could help them do their ministry in the church, that is almost like giving them permission, that they have permission to be able to do this. So it's opening up their mind to think that this is possible for them. And a lot of times for pastors, sometimes we don't think that we have any skills to be able to use outside the church. So I'm a preacher. I do counseling. I do hospital visits, things like that. That's work in the church. So how could I use it outside the church? So that's what I love to do, is help pastors to look at how they can leverage the skills, the know-how, the experience they already have, and put that somehow into the marketplace in a way that creates income. So yes, you are a speaker, you are a mentor, a coach, a guide, you have staff that you lead probably, or at least volunteers. You're involved in fundraising and donor development in some way. You're managing facilities to some extent, maybe even leading a building campaign or buying or selling property. So pastors have all kinds of experiences that they've developed in ministry that they could use in the marketplace in some way. But sometimes it takes someone to just help them to peel back the layers of the onion and to realize the skills, the talents, experiences they have that they could monetize into the marketplace.
So you're helping people figure out how to leverage their skills. You're teaching from experience. You've been on this journey yourself. So what are some of your biggest side hustle successes, and what are some of your biggest disappointments?
Sure. That's great. Well, I'll start with a disappointment first. One of them was doing kettle corn at like fairs and festivals.
I love kettle
And so that was like one of my worst ideas. Not that kettle corn is a bad idea, and I thought it was a tasty idea myself because I had been to some different fairs and festivals and fell in love with kettle corn. So I wanted to have a business that I could do with my family, and we had young kids at the time, and so I thought they could help me in selling the popcorn or making the popcorn. But then I realized, okay, they're a little too young at that point for that kind of labor intensive sort of a thing with safety concerns and food safety handling issues and things like that. Don't blow your nose and then touch the popcorn, so things like that. So I thought it was a great idea, and it did. Some events were awesome and made some great money, but I realized, okay, I'm totally dependent upon the weather, and I'm totally dependent upon the type of event I'm at and how well they've promoted it. And so living in Michigan, having a short season for outdoor events and stuff, I just realized over time that I was doing something that was manual labor, which I could do or anyone could do, but I wasn't using already the skills and experiences and talents that I had. And so I began to think, okay, now in the past, I've been on radio, so I've got a voice I could use, like for audio production. I've done copywriting. I've done fundraising sorts of things. So I began to think, okay, how can I leverage the skills and experiences I already have and make money from those things instead of doing a manual labor thing, which I thought was a great idea, ended up not being so great. So thankfully I was able to sell my equipment and recoup some of my investment back, and then begin to look at other sorts of things. So I have done some copywriting. I have done some fundraising consulting and writing some fundraising campaigns for small organizations. I've done audio production. That's been a side hustle.
And now you're doubling down on your experience of going in and exploring all of this and helping other people who are kind of walking a few steps behind you. So talking about being able to package what you know, this is something now that you've launched the podcast. How's that gone?
Well, the podcast has been fun. I didn't really know what to expect at first or what I wanted to do with it. My vision was to help pastors that wanted more in their life. They felt called to something more. Maybe that was more time or more fulfillment in their work. They wanted to make a bigger difference maybe. But after maybe 10, 15 episodes, I realized, okay, I think I want to hone in more on the more income side to help pastors maybe that are struggling financially, or as I look to the future, I kind of felt like pastors are going to have to make a pivot and shift as I think churches are going to struggle financially. And a lot of it at first has been me sharing my thoughts, my opinions, but now I'm starting to interview people more, and that's really where I wanted to get to in the beginning anyway, is to have other pastors or other people share their experiences to help other pastors get ideas for what they could do. So I didn't want it to be all about myself. So thankfully now I'm beginning to do interviews more, and I really want to do that going forward.
You just described exactly my experience. I started SelfEmployment Sidekick as a way to help people who are exploring different ways to either grow their side gig, start something new, or maybe they're already out there but kind of not sure how to navigate some things that aren't necessarily their strengths. They know how to do their business, and offer the value, whatever that is, if they're doing voiceover, web design, screen printing t-shirts, but then the actual running the business. I started my business and all the paperwork started coming through and like running into all the potholes, and I just wanted to point things out that I'm running into to give people behind me a heads up if that would be helpful. But yeah, trying to be consistent with that is super hard. And I, just like you were saying, I want to start reaching out and having interviews like this one and being able to hear and share other people's expertise. But it also is just a great connecting point. And I think that's something that I've really learned, especially when you're self-employed. I always say self-employment isn't by your self-employment. And the more people you can invite into your experience, and just share ideas, be encouraged, and encourage others. That's what I'm all about. You go a lot further, a lot longer
Yeah,
when you're going with other people. So
that's true.
yeah, it just sounds like
That's such a great insight.
What are some things that you've been kind of learning, and some things that you would encourage people to keep in mind, mistakes to avoid, potholes to avoid, as they're evaluating different business ideas?
I like to have people just look inside. Like, what are your skills that you have? What are your passions? What are your interests? The experiences that you've had, your strengths. So I think we could go off and create something totally different and out of character. But I kind of feel like God has already put within people, so many things, like he's already resourced us with the ideas and with the experiences. And so I like to take an inner view of where we're at and then build from there. So what's unique to me that I could build from what's already inside of me, and then what are some simple steps I can take? A lot of times too, I think we overthink and we think, okay, well, how can I get it to be where I want it to be in 10 years, like in 6 weeks, and so it's like, well, that's not going to happen. But what's one step I could do today? What's one thing I need to figure out, or that I need to learn about, or one call I need to make, or who do I talk to about a website or whatever? But just to think smaller steps, because even small steps, over time add up to big results. And we can look back and are surprised at, wow, how far we've come in a month or a couple months, just taking some steps. So, and then finding some ways, to make money from those things, because not every passion we can make money from. So maybe make a list of like 20 things you're great at, 20 things you could teach other people, 20 things you've got experience in, and then now of those, what are 5 that you can make money from, and then hone that down to, okay, what's my top 2 or top 3, and then start there. So, because if it's a passion, but you're not making money, it's basically a hobby, and so yeah, being able to monetize something is definitely key for longevity. So
I'm really glad you brought up 2 important points there, and it's finding that balance between what are you passionate about, but at the same time, I mean, especially for your audience, but anybody, you shouldn't compromise who you are. And I feel entrepreneurship, it's changing as more people by necessity or interest are kind of going into it and exploring entrepreneurship. But for a while, I feel like it had this negative connotation where you're just an opportunist and you'll do anything for a buck. And it doesn't matter if you actually believe in it. If it makes money, that's all that matters. But to blend those 2 things, like that internal purpose and passion, but also make sure it's profitable, because otherwise, how far are you actually going to be able to take it?
Sure.
I think those are 2 things that are really, really important to keep in mind and hold in balance. This has been a great conversation. There's a lot more I'd love to dig in. We'll have to have you back sometime. But where can people learn more about you and what you do?
I'd love for folks to check me out on my website. It's morethanapastor.com. And you'll find my podcast there, and different blog posts, resources, things like that. So that's what I'm trying to build as my platform right now. And if you're definitely if you're someone that's in ministry, or maybe a pastor or a missionary or someone that maybe needs to hear this. Maybe someone struggling financially in ministry, or maybe it's nothing more than you referring it off to someone else. So, morethanapastor.com.
All right, we'll definitely check that out. Rich, thank you again. I just really appreciate your insight, appreciate what you're doing, and I just wish you all the success as you continue to grow your platform.
Thanks, David. It's been a real blessing to be on the show today. I wish you the same as well. And I love your whole theme of being the self-employment sidekick and being there to help heroes be able to build and grow their businesses. And so I really appreciate what you're doing, and wish you all the best, and all your listeners the best as well.
Thank you for watching and listening. Savvy viewers will note the wardrobe change. That's because it's actually a few days after the original interview. I am almost done editing. Actually, you're watching this now. So I am done editing, and I posted the video for your enjoyment, but I want to let you know there's even more to enjoy. I'll be sharing another video of some deep cuts from the interview where Rich and I dig into topics such as the theology of work and how do you reconcile your faith and reliance on God with your self-reliance and entrepreneurial drive. So check that out. And if that's not enough for you, you can hang out with me and Rich even more in real life, virtually, over at Platform Launchers. That's a membership community that we're both a part of, and not only it is a fantastic place to find guests for your podcast and YouTube channel, it is a genuinely fun and encouraging group of like-minded entrepreneurs who are learning to grow and monetize their platform. So if you're interested in building a business around a YouTube channel, a podcast, a blog, a book, what have you, it's really actually good stuff. And I really encourage you to check out Platform Launchers. There's a number of different resources you can take a look at. I'll leave links below to the membership community. There's a course, a video library, and they just recently launched a new series of 8-week live courses that you can join. If you use my link, sidekick.show/PL30, you can double the normal 14-day free trial into actually it's more than double, a 30-day free trial, so you can spend a full month hanging out with me and the rest of the Platform Launchers and see what it's all about. I hope to see you there.